Well, brothers and sisters, how are you all doing? Today we are back with another video that is very interesting. I like to make to react to videos that are more important to you guys because these videos I try to bring you a real stories that people experience and then they give their stories so you can listen and think for yourself. And I like to bring history and religion. So today we have a video that is about Christianity and Islam. But because the video is too long, I'm I will try to make it shorter and divide the video in two. So part one and part two. So before we go on, can you kindly subscribe to this channel, share this channel to everybody? Please help this channel to grow. Without much say, let's jump into the video.
Good afternoon. My name is Sister Nasr. I'm an American citizen, born in a suburb of Chicago, Illinois called Evergreen Park. And both of my parents were born in Chicago, Illinois. My mother's side of the family was Roman Catholic, my father's side Protestant. This caused some schism in our family, rather unspoken, but nevertheless present and felt in my youth and growing up. One of the temperamental issues, as I recall, was the Catholic Church had a law at that time of not eating meat on Friday. And if you did eat meat on Friday, it was considered a mortal sin. Adultery is a mortal sin. Murder is a mortal sin. With regard to eating meat on Friday, I was always nervous when I went to my father's sister's house on Friday, perhaps for dinner, hoping and praying for that matter that I wouldn't be served meat and be in an awkward or embarrassing situation. And she was teaching us how to pray, and she taught us to pray first to Mary, and then Mary would ask her son, Jesus Christ, and then he would ask his father. I went home thinking about this order of prayer and sat alone for some time in the living room of my family home and thinking deeply about this. And then I just made a very conscious, private decision. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going straight to the boss. And that's actually a quote of my thoughts at that time. As time went on, I was about 17 or 18 years old when the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church changed the law on eating meat on Friday. This was something very significant in my life because since it was classified as a mortal sin, in the Catholic Church, you're required to go to confession on Fridays, confess your sins and receive absolution for these sins. Technically, if someone would have eaten meat on Friday and committed this mortal sin and did not make it to confession to confess this sin, they risked going to the hellfire in death. When this law was changed, I was astonished actually because although I revered the Pope as the leader of the Catholic Church, as all Catholics do, nevertheless, I thought it rather bizarre actually that a human being, although a very pious human being, would have such authority over the eternal fate of a human being. And the first time I ever saw someone reading the scriptures, the Bible, was my mother-in-law. She used to sit daily at the dining room table, stirring a cup of tea and reading the scriptures. So I began reading the Bible, and then I became acquainted with the difference between a Catholic Bible, which contains the Apocrypha, as compared to the King James Version of the Protestant scriptures, as well as other versions of the Protestant scriptures. I started to inquire regarding the differences of the Protestant churches. As an example, what makes a Presbyterian, a Lutheran, a Methodist, a Baptist, Northern Baptist, Southern Baptist, Missionary Baptist, Church of God, Church of Christ, Assembly of God, the Pentecostals, Seventh-day Adventist, and etc. I think there are approximately 200 different denominations. So as a hobby in my life, when I found free time, I was collecting either the church books to study or going and listening to sermons, taking the sermons home and dissecting them myself, taking what the pastor was saying in the sermon back to the scriptures and trying prayerfully to find the truth and the path and where the differences lie, the dividing lines between each of these denominations and why. And so over a period of 10 years in my life, I was very heavily involved in this. This manner of study was not anything like just taking a textbook and studying it. I had great respect and still do for all of the scriptures. And so I would do this in a very prayerful manner. First,
Guys, as you can see that this lady, she's well educated. That's what I'm telling you. Before a Christian will leave Christianity or join another religion, most 90% of them, they are well educated and they educate, they search, and they see that the religion that they agree to, or the religion of Christianity, is not the true religion. That's why you see most of the time they at the end they will be searching for something else, because the true through their searching it revealed that they are not really on the good path. So anyway, let's go.
and he gave me some material. He did not come in, but he gave me material to read. And I had already been a little bit familiar with the Christian sects that are classified by mainline Christianity as heretics. It stood out to me in the material that the Jehovah's Witness pastor gave me that these people did not believe, as an example, in the doctrine of the Trinity. One of the last subjects that I wanted to approach, and by this time I had acquired an array of notebooks filled with subject studies. And one of the last subjects that I wanted to delve into, just to satisfy myself, was the subject of the doctrine of the Trinity. I had stopped at a Baptist church in the mountains, and the pastor was kind enough to give me some seminary documents on the subject, as well as church history. But I had not yet sat down to do my own homework, so to speak, as I was used to doing. I had such a strong prayer life and answers from my God that really nobody could tell me that my God did not exist. Something else I would like to mention, and that is that in and around this time, I started becoming convicted that I should have some kind of a covering on my head, especially when I prayed. I even went to the trouble of going to one of the Protestant churches, which at that time in the neighborhood, or not too far away, was called an Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. And I talked to the pastor at the church about this subject. His response to me was that no, 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 you don't have to cover your head. Your hair is enough of a covering for you. I went home and I went back to the scriptures on this subject, including a scripture, a text in the Old Testament with regard to a Nazarite woman's vow to God. And I just became convinced that I didn't agree with this, and I thought at least I would cover my hair when I prayed. So around this time,
So, as you can see that sometimes the churches are the ones who destroy Christianity. This lady, she know and she read from the Bible that at least if you are going to stand in front of God, you need to cover yourself. But you see, all these fake pastors, all these uneducated, the only thing they need is name. Just believe. Don't worry about that one. This lady know that to stand in front of God, you need to protect or to cover yourself in a respectful way. Like, how will you worship a God that you know? Mary, the mother of Jesus, was a woman who always cover. A man she don't even want a man to come near her. And yet you have a religion that you are doing in the church, going to the church with half naked. Some churches, if you see the type of dress sometimes the women do, is really shameful. To be honest, I can't. Sometimes I really just shocked, thinking, "Wow, this is the way to worship God." So people like this, they are well educated and they know what is important. Nobody asked her to do it, but you know, if you want to stand in front of God, you need to make sure you cover yourself. You see, this is the type of when they see Islam, then they realize that okay, this is the truth, because this one is just like a joke, the Christianity. Anyway, let's go.
life changed, and I went to Egypt with my two children. Uh, Initially, I got involved through my first landlady in Egypt. I got involved with reorganizing a home for orphan children. So I was invited to this through the mother-in-law of my landlady. I visited the home, and actually, this home was being funded by a Finnish organization in Europe. I was troubled about this situation. I had considered myself conservatively dressed for a Christian in Egypt. I was wearing long skirts, but they might have been a couple of inches, about like this, above my ankle bone. And I was usually wearing these three-piece outfits with a top and maybe another jacket, but it might have been three-quarter length sleeve instead of full-length sleeve. And wasn't paying too much attention to the neck and was just tying my scarf behind my head. But this morning when I said my prayer after what had happened the day before, I was sitting down on my knees and I started to commune with my Lord. And I said, Dear Lord, could you please show me the kind of clothing in your sight that is pleasing for a godly woman to wear? Those were my exact words. The same day, first of all, if anybody would have asked me how I thought this prayer might be answered, would be quite confident and say, I'm sure he's going to show me one of the sisters, the nuns from the church. But to my surprise, the same day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was strolling my boys out for a walk, and we stopped at a bookstore. And a Muslim woman approached me in the bookstore. She was very intelligent and she spoke fluent English. She was wearing, it was the month of March. I used to say this story and think that it was the month of February, if anybody has heard this story before. I ran into an old journal of mine and have to correct it because it was early March. And she was wearing a wool, what is called a galabaya, which is a straight dress, long sleeves, with a white scarf on her head. And she was carrying a little girl in a fluffy little white dress with patent leather shoes in her arms. And the astonishing matter was that in the course of our conversation, she is the one who approached me. She was asking me where I was from. She was asking me if I was married to an Egyptian, which I said no. And in the course of this conversation, she said exactly these words: "You can see by my clothes that I am a godly woman." Well, I was completely shocked because this was exactly the language that I had used in my own prayer that morning. And I went home after this, and the next time I was on my knees praying, I lifted up my hands and I said, "But dear Lord, she's a Muslim." It was these houses, which is called the tableya, and we sit around it and eat. And this mother was taking very good care of me. She was letting me know, when it was being translated to me, that she was very surprised. She said, all of the women have their suitcases filled with dresses, but not you. Books, books, books. So in the course of this visit, they were so welcoming, so warm. But something very unusual happened, and that was the oldest son in the family, who spoke most of the English, because he had graduated from Al Azhar University. He popped up and said something. As I said, we were not talking about religion, nothing. We were just having a general visit. And suddenly, he spoke up in a very rather firm, straight voice and said exactly these words. This is a quote: "The God is one, and Jesus Christ was a great prophet, maybe even the greatest, but he was not the Son of the God, and he was not an equal with the God." Stop. That was the end of what he said. I remained silent. Now, by this time in my life, I had been to so many Christian seminars and done so much studying. I was a very strong and rather, not extremely so, but rather conservative Christian. If you saw my Bible, you would see that where I held it, where the book is open, on the side where it's open, I had held it so much that the leather was all worn on it. It was a King James Open Study Bible, and I had all kinds of notes in the margins, and I was, quite frankly, if anyone who knew me as a Christian, they would never, ever imagine that I could become a Muslim. Now, exactly 1 week after these words were spoken to me, and I should also add that when these words were spoken to me, I felt my heart struck. I remained silent because I knew very well that I was carrying enough knowledge that I could give this person a short sermon, as any Christian pastor would teach the subject of the doctrine of the Trinity. But if I was honest with myself, which I chose to be at that time, I knew that it was this subject that was the last of what I was really wanting to study before I left America and came to Egypt and didn't find the time to do. So I knew I hadn't done my own personal homework on this subject. So I chose to remain silent. Exactly 1 week later, I was invited back to the home of the Christian family on the compound. The father, this elderly couple, he was the principal of the school. He was also a math teacher. While I was in my home, in their home with my children, I was admiring a full wall of books in his house. And center and a little bit higher than halfway up the wall, uh, my eyes focused on the Quran. And I was very surprised that this man had the Quran in his house. I have never seen a Quran and didn't know really much of anything, although I was sitting there in Egypt in a population of over probably 95% Muslim. I didn't know anything about Muslims except that I knew that there was a call for prayer that was going on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and that Muslims made a pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia. I knew that. I didn't know anything else about their religion. And so I said to the man, "Oh, you've got the Quran." And he said, yes. He took it down, sat down in his living room, and at random just opened it. And he said, a family from Lebanon, about 9 years ago, gifted my wife and I with this Quran. He said, I've glanced at it a couple of times, but I'm not interested. I won't be reading it. If you want, take it. So this is how I got the Quran. I never received the Quran from the Muslim community. I took this Quran home. And because a week earlier, the statement that was made to me, I decided this is the time for me to finish my homework on the subject of the doctrine of the Trinity. I began 2 weeks of prayer and fasting, which was my, not necessarily always 2 weeks, but I always did prayer and fasting was my usual routine before approaching any subject, because these are the scriptures, and this is a spiritual matter, and it was my own personal experience that the combination of prayer and fasting brought down a great deal of power from my God into my life. So the owner of this villa and his dear wife had offered myself the exchange of going to a brand new villa that they had built in Alexandria at any time I wanted for a change of environment. So this was very kind of them. I took my 2 children and my servant with me, and I went to Alexandria. While in Alexandria, I was planning to spend 1 month and to focus in my free time on this subject matter of study. So in the evening, when I put my children to bed, I would spend the night studying. At the end of this month, and by the way, I want to make something very clear. Prior to going to Alexandria, I had only opened that Quran one time, and it was in the dining room of the villa. I regret to say that I cannot remember what I read or what the surah or the ayat number, which most people, Christians, know as chapter and verses. I have no recollection of what that was. I had just randomly opened it. But whatever I read, I remember instantly, tears came down my face, and I knew only one thing. I was reading something very straight. So I did take that Quran with me, but my study of the doctrine of the Trinity, I didn't trust this book at all. As far as I was concerned, my Bible was the word of my God. So I am planning to do this study of the doctrine of the Trinity based on the Old Testament and the New Testament, using, as usual, my Strong's Exhaustive Concordance to go back to the original language and the meaning, the original intent of the meaning of the words. So in the course of this study over the month, I will just give a few highlights of this right now. As an example, in the book of Deuteronomy, the prophet Moses, may Allah be pleased with him, is calling Bani Israel. And he says, "Hear, O Israel, for the Lord your God is one."
Well. Thanks for watching. This is the halfway of the clip. I will make part two of it because now you can see that we are really watching something that is very important and very interesting, because these type of people, before Christian will leave Christianity, they always study. To be honest, they don't go out of Christianity until they are sure that this Christianity is not true. Until they are sure. So compared to some, if you they say maybe some Muslims become Christian, most of them doesn't know their own religion. Most 90%, if they are the few Muslims who jump into Christianity, they always have a reason why, but not a reason why in the sense that they study the Quran or they study their, no. Most, sometimes even some of them are just liars. They are just there, even the type of people that doesn't really know their own religion. But Christians, before the person will move out of Christianity, they study. They study the Bible very good. And when most of their story, you can see, they go to different churches. Before they will even stop being Christian, they will try different denomination of Christianity, and then they will come to realize that they are all the same. So, brothers and sisters, this type of videos I'm bringing to you, especially for my Christian brothers and sisters, to listen to those who educate or who study the book or the Bible very well. If somebody is a Muslim and he stopped being Muslim and jumped to Christianity, most of them ask them how, what did he know about it? Most of them, they can't even read the first surah of the religion. That means if the person cannot read it, means he's a liar. Because that first surah, before you pray, every prayers, we pray 5 times a day. Every prayers you have to do, you have to read that surah before you read any surah on top of it. So if you can't read that surah, means you are not a Muslim, or you are not even praying Muslim. So somebody like that, these Christians who like to go around preaching to all these villages, when they come to you, they can convince you easily, because you yourself, you are not a practicing Muslim. They like to give you money, give you stuff, worldly stuff that will convince you to follow them, but not a true one. But most of Christians who will left Christianity and come to Islam, they study very well, either in in Christianity and then study Islam before they make their journey out to Islam. And most of Christians, they just stop being Christian, and then they don't care about any other religion. They just think all the religions are the same. But those who are really searching for God will say, okay, if Christianity is not true, what did they have to do next? Then they will try to see, even some will go to Buddhist, try to know what is Buddhist, what is Hinduism. When they come to Islam, and then they will find out that, okay, this is actually the true. So please study. Open your Bible, study the Bible very well. If you want, open the Quran, read the Quran, save your own soul. We are not here for joke, for worldly things. No, we are here for serious matters. You are here to search for your own way. Mother, father is not there for you on the judgment day. You have to you have the responsibility for your own actions. Nobody died for your sin. Put it aside. Thanks for watching. Take care. Share this message. Let people see it. I like to bring this type of program because it's more interesting for those who doesn't know anything about Christianity also to listen to and see the truth. Don't let somebody to come convince you one day that, oh, come and join Christianity. Jesus died for your sin. You don't need to do anything. Don't believe in that bullshit. Well, God bless you all. Take care. Subscribe. Share this message. And the part 2 of this story will follow. Thank you very much. Take care.